welcome to DIY with Nancy. Today I'm going to show you how to make pão de milho, cornbread. A lot of people also call it broa de milho. Regardless, this recipe is so simple to make. 5 ingredients. My mom shared this recipe with me. I actually cut the recipe in half just to make 1 cornbread. Her original recipe has enough to make 2 cornbreads. But you know what? I like the cornbread fresh. If I'm gonna eat it the next day, I toast it, place some butter on it. It's delicious either way. So I hope you stay with me to watch how to make pão de milho cornbread step by step. Now I'm gonna start off with placing 3 cups of all-purpose flour in the bowl. Next, I'm adding 2 cups of white corn flour. You can use yellow corn flour. I prefer to use white, so that's an optional choice for you. To that, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of salt. And the last dry ingredient is 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast. Now that I have all the dry ingredients in the bowl, I'm just going to stir it together, and I'm going to create a little well in the center of the flour. Now I have the little well in the center of the flour, and I'm ready to add the last ingredient. Now for the last ingredient, you'll need 2 1/4 cups of hot boiling water. You can boil your water in a kettle or in a pot. I happen to have a hot water tank that will provide me with boiling water, so I'm using that. So it's going to be 2 1/4 cups of hot boiling water. Now that I have the hot boiling water and I have a well created in the center of the flour, I'm gradually going to add the water in little bits at a time. So I add the first little bit of water, and what I'm going to do is start off by using a wooden spoon and stir in the flour with the water. As it's drying out, I will continue adding a little bit of the water until I use the 2 1/4 cups of water. And you'll see as you're stirring, the dough will form into a ball once you have all the water added. Now, if you have too much water and you find that the dough is too wet, you can easily add a little bit of corn flour. Once you have all of the water incorporated, and that's the boiling water, you'll see that the centos will start forming a ball of dough, and the dough will start pulling away from the sides of the bowl. I'm going to continue adding the water slowly, keep stirring the flour to form the dough. Now, once I have the ball of dough formed in the center, I'll show you the next step. Now, as you can see, I have my ball of dough formed in the center. I'm done mixing. And now what I'm going to do is just let the dough set. So I'm going to set it aside for about 20 minutes. For the next step, I've let the dough set for 20 minutes. I have here about 3 tablespoons of corn flour. And I'm going to dust the working surface because I'm going to knead the dough. So you just need a little bit of the corn flour on your counter so the dough doesn't stick, and we're going to knead it. So I'm going to flip it over, just remove the dough from the bowl, just as I'm doing here. I'm just trying to be gentle, making sure some flour on my hands so the dough doesn't stick. And I'm just going to place it right onto the counter. And I'm going to gently knead it. You don't want to overwork this dough. So I'm going to place some corn flour in my hands and just gently knead the dough for about 30 seconds. Now, as you can see, that was a quick knead. Once you're done the kneading process, you just form the dough into a ball, just as I'm doing here. Make sure it's nice and round. And once you have your ball of dough formed, we're going to take some corn flour the same corn flour that I've been using, which is the 3 tablespoons. Just place it right into the bowl. You can use the same bowl. You don't have to dirty another bowl. Just make sure a little bit of the corn flour on the sides and the bottom. You're going to take your ball of dough. Make sure it's nicely formed. Just place it right in the middle. Now for the next step, we're going to cover up the dough, set it aside, and let the dough rise. It will take approximately 1 hour for the dough to double in size. After 1 hour, I have my dough here. Just going to uncover it. It's now doubled in size. I want you to take a look at it. And at this point, you want to ensure that your oven is preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That way, the oven is nice and hot. And before I place the cornbread in the oven, I'll reduce the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now for the next step, you'll need a baking tray with parchment paper to bake the cornbread. And then I'm going to also place some corn flour on my working surface. And I'm also placing some corn flour on the baking tray. So once I put my cornbread dough on the baking tray, it doesn't stick to the parchment paper while the cornbread is baking. Now for the next step, I'm just going to gently remove the cornbread, or the dough rather, onto the working surface, just as I'm doing here. I'm going to do that gently. And before I place the dough on the baking tray, I'm simply going to form it into a nice round cornbread. So I'm just going to make sure that it's nice and round, have some corn flour on my hands so it doesn't stick to the dough as I'm forming it. And you can see all I'm doing is pushing it together and just turning it around and forming it into a nice round dough. I've formed the dough into a nice round shape, place it on the baking tray. And now for the last step, I'm going to take the rest of the corn flour I have here and just dust it right onto the dough. I'm now ready to place the cornbread in the oven. I've reduced the temperature from 450 degrees Fahrenheit to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to bake the cornbread at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to place it in the oven in the middle rack for 1 hour. I'm going to set my timer. Now here's my pan de milho after 1 hour. It looks perfect. And I'm just going to let it set for about 10-15 minutes before I cut into it. It's too hot to handle. Now listen to how crunchy it is on the top. Now let's cut into it and show you what this cornbread looks like inside. Now this sound is just music to my ears. Nice and crunchy on the outside. And it's perfect on the inside, but I'm going to cut a few more slices and I want you to see what it looks like. I'm going to show it to you. Just give me 1 second. Oh my gosh, this bread smells good too. Oh, can't wait to have some. It's nice and warm. I love putting manteiga or butter in the bread. Let me show you what it looks like. Now here's a perfect slice of pan de milho cornbread. Look at that. The texture inside is just perfect, soft, and crunchy on the outside. I've always had a preference of cornbread, and I always like the first slice that I cut, which is the corner. It's got that crispiness on the outside and the softness in the inside. It's just the perfect slice of pan de milho. And there you have it, everyone. That was my recipe for pan de milho cornbread. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. If you all do like the recipe, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Take care.